I want to watch you welcome. I want to welcome you to the Retro Rogues, not quite so live. You want to point it? Wow, I'm really goofing this up. I'm really struggling right now because we're doing a pre-recorded show instead of a regular show, and it's really causing me to mess up. So let me start over. I want to welcome you to the Retro Rogues, not quite so live. Please pay attention to our warning graphic. It states that the Retro Rogues live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. Again, I want to welcome you to this pre-recorded show. That's right. This show is not going out live. This is pre-recorded. However, uh, there will be someone monitoring the chat. So if you're watching the show, even though it's pre-recorded, if you actually respond or post a comment or whatever, I think Eric's going to be monitoring the chat. If I'm able to, I will also monitor the chat and also chat with everyone as well. We'll just see kind of how that goes. But this, of course, is because tomorrow is Thanksgiving. That's right. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. So because of that, we're going to pre-record the show tonight. On tonight's show, or on tonight's episode, we're going to be talking, well, we're not going to be talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife, but in celebration of Ghostbusters Afterlife, I am going to be live drawing Slimer. We also are going to be talking about Dark Horse to start doing Star Wars again. And what is going on with Ridley Scott? That and so much more on tonight's episode of the Retro Rogues. This episode, anyway, not quite so live. I want to welcome to the show. My name is Dave Beatty. For nearly the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. I've worked on a lot of fun things, that some people have heard of, such as Batman Incorporated, Justice League of America, and even Flashpoint Wonder Woman. That's right. I changed it up just for tonight. There you go. I want to welcome back, as always, my great co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks, if you watch or listening at home, what are the fun things you have worked on as a creative professional?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Eric Alexander, also known as Bass God 14. That's Bass God 14, not Bass God. That's Bass God, like a bass guitar. And I am the Chief Financial Officer of Bad Bob Productions, which is a film production company located in Arizona. I'm also currently the executive producer on a film called Staycation, which has been filming on location in California and all over the world via Zoom.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So why don't you go to the first story, Eric, and I'm going to go ahead and start drawing. This will be a little weird for us because obviously we're not able to directly interact with any of you who might be watching right now in the Rogues Gallery. Again, we still want to encourage you. Please comment because either Eric, I know Eric is going to monitor the chat and comment along with everyone. And like I said, if I get a chance, I intend to as well. So please comment and react to the stories. All right, I'm going to get to drawing now.
Of course, the odd thing today is that I don't get to have your live chats as we're recording here. Obviously, this is a pre-recorded show. So, we are recording this on Wednesday, November 24th. Again, as Dave explained, that's because tomorrow, which is today, I guess, for you actually seeing this broadcast, is Thanksgiving. So I do want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. That is the reason that we're doing a pre-recorded show because we both are going to be spending some time with our families on Thanksgiving, which I hope you are as well. And if you aren't, by the way, I'm sorry to hear that, but you can spend Thanksgiving with us. That's part of why we decided to go ahead and pre-record this rather than do nothing and not have a show. So join us. We'll be your family today if you don't have one for Thanksgiving. So the first thing I wanted to start out with was I think it's kind of a lot of people have different interpretations of this particular story. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to share this. Sometimes we have some technical problems. I'm hoping since we're not broadcasting, we won't have those technical problems we've had in the past when I share my screen. So this is from StarWars.com. This article actually came out, or this news actually broke out, I think almost immediately after we went off the air. This came out on November 18th. So here we go. StarWars.com article says Dark Horse Comics returns to the Star Wars galaxy. New all ages comics and graphic novels from the storied publisher will debut in the spring of 2022. Dark Horse Comics is heading back to a galaxy far, far away in 2022. The storied publisher, which has worked with Lucasfilm on a variety of titles from Dark Empire in 1991 to The Art of Star Wars Rebels in 2020, has announced a new line of all ages comics and graphic novels expanding the Star Wars galaxy like never before. Beginning in the spring of 2022, experience adventures in every era from the High Republic through the rise of the First Order, with new and exciting stories produced in collaboration with Lucasfilm and Disney Worldwide Publishing. The idea is to build up a Star Wars program that includes an ongoing series as well as an anthology, says Mike Richardson, Dark Horse Comics founder and CEO. Mixed in would be one-shots and specials. We'll see where we go from there. Initially, we will focus on stories featuring the High Republic. The new comics and graphic novels continue nearly 30 years of partnership created by passionate fans and renowned artists and writers. Star Wars is near and dear to all of our hearts, and I've been a fan since I saw the original film 19 times during its original release, Richardson notes. I am thrilled that Dark Horse will once again bring new stories to life from this incredible galaxy. The Star Wars universe has grown over the years, and there's so many new opportunities for great stories. I can't tell you how excited we are to get started. All of us at Lucasfilm Publishing are thrilled to be working with Mike Richardson and everyone at Dark Horse on comics and original graphic novels set in a galaxy far, far away, adds Michael Siglane, the creative director from Lucasfilm Publishing. There are unlimited storytelling possibilities for all ages comics, and we look forward to collaborating with Dark Horse and with the best writers and artists in the industry to bring those stories to readers and fans all over the world. Marvel Comics will continue publishing its line of critically acclaimed Star Wars comics alongside Dark Horse Comics. And that is a key part of this actual release here. I think this is interesting. I know a lot of people were actually pretty concerned when this first came out because of the headline. And the way that a lot of fans took this particular story was that basically Disney, which of course owns Marvel and owns Marvel's publishing division, owns Marvel Comics, right? Disney owns Marvel Comics. A lot of people were feeling like this is basically like the first step to stopping that, to no longer be making Star Wars comics at Marvel. And I'm curious, Dave, if you would kind of heard a little bit of that as well, where people were kind of like reading between the lines a little bit. Obviously, this press release specifically states that that's not the case, but I'm curious what you think about that.
Well, what's interesting about it is I know that for Dark Horse, like their Star Wars books were very, very successful, and it was very, very important, to the company, like as a whole. At least that was always the impression that I got. I used to have friends who worked at Dark Horse. Actually, my friend Mike Caraglito was an editor at Dark Horse, and he worked on the Star Wars line at one point. And I just remembered having talked to him and stuff that was like a very, very big deal for Dark Horse. As far as Dark Horse or Marvel ceasing publication of their actual titles, the story says that they're not going to, and it sounds like that what Dark Horse might be doing is focusing on just like a particular line. It sounds like they're going to be doing High Republic type stuff, but I think what's going to happen, in all honesty, Eric, is I think they're going to start publishing the books, and I think both parties are just going to kind of be in a sort of a let's wait and see how this goes, sort of a pattern. At least that's what I think. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but that's just the impression I get from that. It's sort of like they're going to try this and then see how it works. But irregardless, honestly, I don't think it's going to negatively impact, depending upon how you feel about it, the newer Star Wars stuff, just because they seem to be very much set on keeping their, current timeline. So I think that, what's happening, whether it's Star Course or Marvel, I don't think you're going to see a radically different change. So if you're enjoying what they're doing, I think that's going to continue. And then if you're not enjoying what they're doing, I think that's also going to continue.
In other words, they're staying the course, right?
Yeah,
That's kind of
that's what I think is really going on at the end of the day. So
well, there's two aspects I think to this story that are interesting. First of all, we actually did cover previously, and it was a while ago. We were actually involved in some of the speculation because IDW was doing the children Star Wars comics, the adventures type stuff,
right,
which is very typical. They do that with DC and Marvel superheroes as well. They'll have like Superman Adventures, Batman Adventures, and that's the all ages version of the books. Honestly, a lot of times I feel like I prefer that stuff to what the modern stuff is. It's just I guess my sensibility. And a lot of those were the last comics I bought, and I bought them for my kids, and then I would read them too, and I usually would really enjoy them. I remember my kids really liked the Teen Titans Go comic book, and that was an all ages book. So previously, IDW was doing that. And we did comment on the show. That was a long time ago when that started. And we were commenting on the show because we were speculating, is this a bad sign for the future of Marvel comics, Star Wars Marvel comics, because the thing is, I think we both kind of agree that Disney doesn't have a huge interest in comic book publishing. They never have. And there have been Disney comics, I mean, almost since the beginning. I think one of the most famous is the Uncle Scrooge comics, which were very popular and actually still are. The reprinted versions of the Uncle Scrooge comics, which went for a very long time. But the funny thing is, Disney never published those. They always used other publishers to actually make the books, the physical books. And so Disney has this precedence of not really being interested in comics, even though they are, which is kind of weird. In other words, I guess they're okay with creating comics. They don't like the idea of publishing them. At least that's the history of the company. And I think a lot of people wonder about that, if that's continuing to this day, and if Marvel, as far as publishing comics, is something that Disney is really committed to or not. And when IDW started doing this, I think there was a speculation that, hey, what's going to IDW next? Now, what's funny here is now IDW is gone, or at least is going to be gone, and Dark Horse is coming back. And the interesting aspect of that is of course, Dark Horse's long history of publishing Star Wars comics. They have a much longer history than certainly IDW did. They actually rival Marvel itself, because Marvel published the original Star Wars comic books. But Dark Horse did it for years and years and years. And then, of course, they lost the license. And then when they did decide to do the adventure books, they went with IDW. So now Dark Horse is taking over that niche. And it's kind of interesting that they're doing that. Kind of makes you wonder what happened with IDW. Were they not pleased with what they were doing? Did they not like the product? I'm not terribly familiar with the IDW Star Wars books. I have seen some covers and things like that. So I don't know if maybe they just didn't like what they were doing, or if it came down to money. Maybe they got a better deal with Dark Horse, right? Maybe it's a little cheaper for them to do to do Dark Horse, or maybe Dark Horse is actually giving Disney more money on the back end, that kind of a thing. They got a better split or something like that than they had with IDW. Who knows? That's something I haven't heard reported, as far as the behind the scenes of why did IDW get let go? What was the problem with IDW? Why don't they want to work with them anymore? That part of the story I haven't heard anything about.
And I have heard rumblings, and I've heard kind of different things. I don't know exactly what's happening over it at IDW, but I have been hearing rumblings that there's maybe stuff going on over there. but I don't know exactly what that is. It's just sort of some things I've just kind of heard, but I don't have any real hard specifics. It might be something actually to look into, maybe actually for next episode too. I'll try and do a little bit of digging on my side to see if I can find out anything. But I just remembered hearing rumblings that there's something going on over at IDW, but I don't know exactly what's going on over there.
Yeah, IDW, I believe, still has like the Star Trek license. They still have some other significant licenses over there. I'll be honest. I think a lot of the IDW comics, in my experience, I don't have a lot of them. I have a few, and I'll be honest. I think a lot of times they're kind of uneven. Maybe even I'd go so far as lackluster sometimes. So I'm not trying to say that, all the IDW comics stink or anything like that. It's not like I have this extensive collection of IDW comics, but I haven't been terribly impressed with the ones that I own, that I've read. I think we've even reviewed a few comics here and there from IDW over time, because they do have several of the licenses, which is interesting because for a long time, Dark Horse seemed to be doing, a lot of the licenses. So they seem to compete. Both of them seem to compete
Right.
quite a bit for the licensed properties, as opposed to creating, their own either creator owned or straight out the publisher owning their own characters and things like that. But they seem to have a little bit of a different business model than, say, actually Marvel, DC, or Image for that matter. That I know Dark Horse. I think for a while there was kind of a thought that Dark Horse might be able to compete with Image, because they did have some creator-owned content. There were some creator-owned properties at Dark Horse, and I think there still are, as far as I know. That there are still some creator-owned titles over there. I don't know about IDW, actually. I don't know if they really even do that. It seems like all their stuff is licensed. But it does make me curious as to what happened behind the scenes with IDW. Now, again, the bigger part of that is, and it goes all the way back to when IDW started publishing the adventure comics. A big question is, why doesn't Marvel just do this? I mean, that's what we were asking when we first heard about IDW doing this. Is like, why isn't Marvel publishing the all ages books? I think
Well,
that's a legitimate question.
it is a very legitimate question, and it's weird because I think that we saw a press release or something that sort of, when that announcement came out, that sort of seemed to hint at the fact that they felt like that they could do a better job. But I think that's a lot of spin too, because a lot of times this stuff just comes down to money. I mean, again, I don't know for sure, but that's usually part of the story, whether you
Yes.
hear that or not. Um, and so sometimes it makes more financial sense because you can let someone else basically help, keep the brand awareness out there, and you can get paid while they're basically marketing your product. But at the end of the day, you're not actually having to pay to produce it. So
Right.
that's a very, very real thing that happens all the time. And I would not be surprised if that's going on in this particular instance.
And of course, that leads to the question of, okay, well, if they are getting a better deal, in other words, if it makes more financial sense, right, to have the comics done by Dark Horse, these adventure comics, well, why don't they just do that with all the Star Wars comics? Or for that matter, why don't they just do that with all of their comics? Why not just get out of the comic publishing sphere completely? If it does make more financial sense, I'll be honest. I would feel like Disney would just be like, yeah, let's just close down the actual publishing aspect of this business, and let's just license everything.
Well, that's always the very real fear at the end of the day, is that's what they're trying to do. And to be honest with you, I think the only reason there hasn't been more moves like this happening, I think it just comes down to the simple fact that they haven't found the best publishing partner to make that happen. But I would not be surprised if that's where this story ends. With another company basically publishing, paying for the rights to license and publish, Star Wars and whatever else, and then basically at that point they're kind of, out of the comics publishing game. I wouldn't be shocked at that at all.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest concerns that people have. And I do know a lot of people did kind of falsely report this. Like all they did was they looked at the title, and they didn't
Yeah,
read the article. In other words, they didn't read that. Yeah, the Star Wars comics are still continuing at Marvel. Those titles are not being canceled or anything like that.
right.
But I do understand, the aspect of that, of where that speculation is coming from, because again, if it makes more financial sense, if they're saying it makes more financial sense to make these particular books, to license these books, in other words, have another publisher involved in actually making the books, it comes full circle, and you're like, well, why not do that with everything then? And I think part of that is what you were just saying, Dave, is that maybe because things didn't work out with IDW, like it was maybe like a test balloon, right?
Yeah,
They were kind of like trying to see if this could work, and for whatever reason they did not like what was happening at IDW, and it could be a quality issue, it could be simply a price issue where they didn't feel like they were getting a good deal. But if it didn't work out, now they're shopping it to someone else who Lucasfilm certainly has had a long relationship with. Disney has not, as far as I know. I don't think that there's been previous Disney properties that, licenses with Dark Horse specifically. I don't know that for sure, but none come to mind. But Lucasfilm certainly has had that relationship with Dark Horse. So maybe they said, you know what? Hey, we've got some, now Lucasfilm was part of Disney. Maybe somebody at Lucasfilm was like, hey, we always had a great relationship with Dark Horse. Why don't we try them? And then
right.
if that the question then becomes, if that model is successful and they end up really liking this, and the books end up selling well, and they like the arrangement they have, are they going to duplicate this model? Are they eventually going to put all the Star Wars comics there? Are they eventually going to start putting like Iron Man there or something like that? That's, I think, the big question that a lot of fans are wondering about.
Well, and I think that, like I said, I honestly do believe that this could be essentially like another test case to see if this can actually work.
Right.
Again, I would not be surprised if that's where all of this is headed at the end of the day, is essentially, taking that publishing business and shifting it over there. I wouldn't be surprised at that, even in the slightest. And, in addition to the fact that, they may be going, well, Dark Horse, did a really great job with this, the Star Wars licenses, and, maybe we could work with them. I also wouldn't be surprised too, if this isn't somewhat fan motivated. The fans really like the Star Wars comics, and they were published at Dark Horse. So a percentage of this, in all honesty, could also be the fact that, the fans have been clamoring for Dark Horse to start doing the Star Wars comics again.
I will say from that aspect, I do have quite a few Dark Horse Star Wars comics. I mean, I don't have like a huge collection or anything, but I was into a lot of their titles, their artwork, and I really liked it. I actually thought what Dark Horse was doing was pretty impressive to me, and I like the fact that they had a variety. Like they did have stuff that was targeted more towards an adult audience. Then they also had stuff that was much more, all ages, family friendly kind of stuff as well, that I remember. And I remember really liking a lot of the stuff that they were doing. There were like, I think it was one called like Star Wars Tales, which was like an anthology series. I really liked that because they would like, I remember one story. It was actually about the stormtrooper that Leia shot in the original Star Wars. They actually did the backstory of that stormtrooper. And I thought that was so cool. I mean, I just thought that was so interesting that they took this incredibly minor character, but still a significant character, because He's that stormtrooper that Leia kills, and they gave you his entire backstory. And
Yeah.
they did some really cool stuff like that in Dark Horse that I really enjoyed, and I thought they did a good job on. And I'll be honest, I haven't been as impressed with the stuff that I've seen from Marvel. The more recent stuff. Again, I don't have like a huge collection of that stuff either, but it just hasn't really impressed me all that much. So I can see that aspect that maybe some fans feel the same way, and basically we're like, hey, we always really like the Dark Horse comics. We're not really digging the Marvel ones as much. And maybe that also could be part of it. Like you said, maybe there is some fan support, fan momentum for this push, back over to Dark Horse, particularly with Star Wars.
Yeah, I could really really see that as being a big motivator. Um, in addition to the fact that, like I said, Dark Horse publishes really good books. I mean, they've been in my mind anyway, one of the top, if not the top, independent, you know, uh, comics publisher for a very long time. And it's weird to me too because I remember that when they lost the Star Wars license, that's all anyone really talked about, which I thought was, in my mind anyway, very much a disservice to Dark Horse and all the incredible titles that they've published over the course of their career. No one really talks about things like um, Concrete. No one really talks too much about even like their was it Comics Greatest World. They're actually Dark Horse owned superhero universe they created with things like X and Ghost. Ghost was such an absolutely incredible modern update and reinterpretation of the Shadow in my mind. Um, they've just published so many great books, and of course they did the Aliens line. The Aliens books were incredible. They did the Predators books, which were incredible. They did the Terminator books, which were incredible. They did some RoboCop books that were incredible. Like Dark Horse published a lot of really great licensed books,
Yeah,
and all.
they were really felt like they were known for that, even though they
Yeah,
obviously did have some other like creator owned stuff as well. But the licensed stuff, I think, is what people really remember from Dark Horse. And like you said, there were just multiple titles that they did that people I think really really liked.
and I just thought it was so weird because I remembered when that happened and they lost the license to do Star Wars, how it seemed like that's all anyone was talking about. And then to me, Dark Horse published Digimon. Like they published a lot of different things. They were way more than just Star Wars. Their Star Wars books were definitely some of their best material of the creator-owned stuff that they published. The next stuff I would say would be actually Aliens and the Predator comics because that's what I read the most of. Um, but they did some great manga. They actually reprinted a lot of great manga, things like Blade of the Immortal. Like Dark Horse has had such an incredible publishing, catalog
Yeah,
of titles, and um, they're so much more than Star Wars. But I do know, like I said, that when they lost Star Wars, I, I did feel that way, and I remembered hearing from different people that they said that it would definitely hurt, Dark Horse business wise, pretty significantly. So
I mean, that was obviously a major property for them,
yeah,
and like they did a lot with it. That's what I think is also worth noting. It's like I said, they did like these anthology series, and they did all these other, they did all these individual series, and of course, they did, adaptations of particular movies that were out during that time or things like that. But they used the license quite a bit, and it was
yeah,
obviously very prominent. And in the case of Marvel, I don't know how if fans regard Marvel has done the same. If they feel like Marvel's done a good job with the license or not. Well, it's not really a license. Technically, it's in house, right? It's just a
yeah.
different. It's just a different appendage, if you will, of Disney, technically speaking. But that brings it full circle. Again, it becomes like, okay, well, they've got their own publishing arm, and this is a pretty well established when you're talking about Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics has been number one in comics, pretty much all the time. Even way over DC. There's only been a few years where DC has actually surpassed Marvel Comics, and it's like, but for whatever reason, they're deciding not to do these books there. And like I said, coming full circle, it begs the question: why? Why not? Why aren't they just doing it in house?
Well, and that's the thing, that maybe eventually there'll be a comics historian or someone who will dig into all the specifics and the minutia of what's going on and what happened and what drove this. But I feel like that's the kind of stuff that typically you don't really hear the answers to those questions until much, much, much later. So,
Yes, very
um,
true. What I think would be really interesting, and would give us a better insight to what exactly is going on, is to actually see what the deal was, the actual contract with IDW versus what the contract is going to be with Dark Horse. I would love to see that. I would love to know the actual deal, and if there is a significant difference, if there's some sort of difference in the split or however they're doing it. Um,
right.
I'd be very, very, very curious to know if there's a significant difference in the deal that they've made with Dark Horse versus the deal they had with IDW. I'd be very, very curious to know that.
And I feel that that's the kind of thing, that there isn't really, there used to be, you know, like real comics like reporting. I know there's some rumor mill stuff and there's still some kind of stuff here and there that's done, but there hasn't been any real comics reporting in my mind, really done in a long time. At least not the way that it used to be, where someone would really dig into a lot of these things and ask a little bit more. And like I said, I know there's rumor sites and there probably is some deeper reporting going on that maybe I'm not aware of, but that's also kind of the problem is like if that reporting is being done, it's like, you know, why don't more people know where to go to get that information? Like, um, so I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
have to see.
yeah. I think it's part of the corporatization of media in general, right? You
Right.
see a lot of what really becomes shillism. These guys are masquerading as journalists, but really what they are is just another marketing arm. I was talking about an article last week. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I made the point that the article was just like so like it didn't. It was actually when we were talking about Discovery, and we were talking about that the deal where Netflix was no longer going to be airing Discovery internationally, and the source I had, which I think was Variety or something like that, which is a respected name when it comes to anyone it comes to quote unquote entertainment journalism or film
Right.
journalism. But the article gave it such, like, there was nothing negative in the article. There was not even the basic question of, hey, why is it that they're doing this now, which will translate into this show will not be available in these certain markets for for months. How is that? How they wouldn't even like they didn't even like focus on that negative aspect at all. It was just like, oh, this is a good thing. This is just everything's going to plan. This is just part of Paramount Plus's expansion. And my
Right.
point is, it becomes this like shill article where it's like you don't sound like a journalist anymore. You now, like I said, you sound like you're part of the marketing department. And
Right.
I've seen the same thing when it comes to what you were just saying about journalism, comic book journalism. It just seems like you're basically just getting the press release. That's kind of like why, in this case, I didn't even use an article. I just went straight to StarWars.com and just said, you know what? That's what they're sourcing, right? The people
Yeah.
that are writing articles about this, they're just sourcing this, and then it's almost like the press release is doing their job, right? And I've heard that criticism before of a lot of journalism. It's like they actually just rely on the press release, and then they don't do any additional fact checking. They don't dig deeper into the story. They don't even put an angle on it, which is, you know, you think that that's kind of what they do, right? But no, it's strange sometimes when it comes to this corporate stuff, and everybody just seems to be patting each other on the back, and this is all good and this is all great. And it's like, well, but there are some fundamental questions here, about how this is going to, the greater effect this is going to have on the industry and on fans, and they're not even touching on it. They're not
Right.
even touching on it.
Right.
And I just think that's crazy. I wish that we had a source, and like you said, I'm sure that there's probably are some bloggers out there, maybe some other independent places that do look into this a little bit more. But I just wish that stuff was a little bit more accessible, where I could have it at my fingertips, and I could tell you, well, hey, this is what the buzz is considering what IDW had. This is the buzz on what Dark Horse is doing now. This is the meat and potatoes of the deal.
Right. And that's the thing that I wish it was easy, because there used to be, a lot of really great comics news sites, and everybody knew kind of where to go to get a lot of that kind of news. And of course, I, being an older dude, like I still enjoyed reading all the print media. So, things like Comics Journal and even oh shoot,
I
what
liked
was the name
Wizard.
of it?
I actually
Wizard?
had quite a collection. And of course, I also like the way that Wizard was just put together. The fact that it was the
Right.
same size as a comic book and it was so colorful. I really dug Wizard.
Well, and then there was I'm really struggling on the name. There was actually a really great, it was essentially, it was like a newspaper. It was like a comics newspaper, and they did a lot of really great reporting. And I used to love getting that in the mail, and they would source articles and follow up and ask questions, and did actual real journalism specifically for the comic book industry. But that just hasn't been very important for anyone, it seems like, for quite some time.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it goes beyond just comics. I think that there's lazy journalism in general these days, especially when it comes to entertainment. It just doesn't seem like the serious reporting is there like it used to be. I guess is the way
Right.
I'm going to put it. There is too much of this just copy and paste the press release,
Right.
and it takes away from that journalistic integrity of your quote unquote objective. You're going to report on multiple aspects of this story. I don't hear anybody saying, well, what happened to IDW? I don't even hear the question being asked because, again, I think a lot of people are just focusing on the aspect of kind of misreporting it or misrepresenting the story and saying, okay, Marvel's no longer doing Star Wars comics. Well,
Right.
that's not true. At least they say it's not true. They are going to continue doing the Marvel books. So it's like they focus on that, and then nobody's talking about, well, what happened with IDW?
Right.
Simple question: what happened to IDW? What was the problem there? Was this amicable? Were they displeased with IDW? Was IDW upset with their deal? You know what I mean? Who was the instigator here?
Right. Right.
Those are relevant questions, and if you're going to be you're trying to follow the industry and see what's going on, those are very relevant questions.
Right. Totally agree.
Cool. Do you have any more thoughts on this story?
No, I mean, I think I've expressed, what I want to express in terms of the context of, what does this mean, kind of in a larger kind of context. I mean, it's just gonna, like I said, it's just gonna take time, and it's gonna take some people to actually do some. I think honestly, we won't really know until someone actually seriously does some actual real deep diving, comics journalism, and to what the specifics of all this was. Like I said, I know that for Dark Horse, it was a very important part of their business. So I
Yeah.
know that they have got to be thrilled to have this license back. And then I'm pretty sure that they're hoping that this goes well, and maybe they can get the license to a lot of other, properties they used to have. When Disney bought Fox, um, in addition to when they bought Lucasfilm, like that did a lot of damage, to their business. And so I know that. Sorry, I'm struggling with these tools here. I know that, yeah, I hit one wrong thing and it throws everything out of whack. So I know that they are very excited to probably have, I would imagine, Star Wars back. But I think that they're also hoping too that this might help them to get, Aliens back, and might help them to get Predator back and whatever else. I mean, because Marvel is publishing Aliens comics right now. I read the first two issues and I was like, I don't know, I think I'm good, and I just kind of moved on. Um, and I love the Dark Horse line. I have I think I have every single what do they call that? Like, it's not an essential, but it's where they collect all of it together.
Like the omnibus.
Yes, I have 5 volumes of Aliens and Omnibus that I bought from Dark Horse. I have 2 volumes of Predator, and I have the first volume of Aliens versus Predator all in Omnibus over there on my shelf.
That's cool.
Um, and I love the work that they were doing. So, like I said, I know they're excited from a business standpoint, but the specifics of what all's going on, I don't think we'll really, really know what was happening until many, many years from now.
Yeah, another interesting aspect that I didn't even think about, but it just occurred to me right now is does Disney not trust Marvel with family friendly fare? Because it's kind of funny because there are a lot of people that I know are very dismissive of modern comics and what Marvel's been doing, and a lot of the stuff it does seem geared more towards teenagers or adults, and it's kind of funny because I've certainly felt that the industry in a lot of ways alienated kids because a lot of people in the industry they wanted to be quote unquote taken seriously,
Right.
and what they did was they drove away the kids. And you can't have an industry like comics sustain itself without new fans. I mean, you can't. I mean, that is literally why the comic book industry is in the state that it's in right now. And I can't help but wonder if maybe there's somebody over there at Disney that says, you know what, Marvel doesn't do a good job with family friendly stuff, so we're just going to take it somewhere else because we just don't like what they do over there. I
Right.
wonder if that could be a possibility as well, that they're just like they feel like the people at Marvel just don't get it anymore, like they've lost the kids and they're not getting
Right.
them back. I just thought that just kind of popped into my head right now.
Right.
So we shall see. We shall see if Dark Horse can indeed get the kids, because that's what this line is going to start out being. It's all ages. It's family friendly stuff. So we'll see if they can actually get the kids interested. All right. So I did have another article here. I'll bring it up real quick. And this is from the Hollywood Reporter. This is a little bit more modern article, or a little more recent. This was dated November 22nd. So here's the title. It says, Ridley Scott pins the Last Duel bombing on apathetic millennials. The film starring Matt Damon, Adam Driver, Jodie Comer, and Ben Affleck cratered when it arrived exclusively in theaters in late October. It says Ridley Scott knows who to blame for his epic The Last Duel bombing this fall. And it's not Disney, which he contends did a great job promoting the historical drama. The Oscar-nominated director dropped by Mark Maron's WTF podcast for an episode published Monday in which he discussed his iconic career. Maron said he was impressed that Scott had 2 enormous pictures out this year, The Last Duel and the upcoming House of Gucci. When it arrived exclusively in theaters in late October, 20th Century's The Last Duel, starring Matt Damon, Adam Driver, Jodie Comer, and Ben Affleck, cratered. It made $27 million worldwide, off a $100 million budget. Whew, those are some bad numbers. Scott told Maron he was somewhat concerned that Disney acquired Fox Studio would undersell the graphic film, but that was not the case. Disney did a fantastic promotion job, Scott said on the podcast, The bosses loved the movie. I was concerned it was not for them. Scott's explanation for the horrible box office performance: apathetic millennials. Here's the quote. I think what it boils down to, what we've got today, are the audiences who were brought up on these effing cell phones. The millennian did not ever want to be taught anything unless you've told it on a cell phone, Scott said. This is a broad stroke, but I think we're dealing with it right now with Facebook, Scott added. This is a misdirection that has happened where it's given the wrong kind of confidence to the latest generation, I think. Scott said he stood firmly by The Last Duel, and the decision-making process at the studio was solid throughout. That's the call you can make, he said, of this undertaking, the project. That's the call Fox made. We all thought it was a terrific script, and we made it. You can't win all the time. I've never had one regret on any movie I've ever made. Nothing. I learned very early on to be your own critic. The only thing you should really have an opinion on is what you just did. Walk away, make sure you're happy, and don't look back. That's me. By the way, I do think that's actually some pretty good, a good philosophy there at the end. But I'm curious, Dave, if you'd heard about this, and what do you think of Ridley Scott blaming millennials and cell phones for his movie bombing?
Well, allow me to just state something very simply. Okay. I do not, let me start by saying I do not hate millennials, and I didn't do the rendering. I didn't do the rendering part of this yet because I wanted people to better watch me while I do it. So let me go ahead and start working on the rendering portion of this. So, but what I am going to say is this, straight up for real today, at my day job, we had a situation where someone called that needed to check on an order. And so one of the new guys answered, and then tried to help him. And then the guy eventually called back, and then I tried to help him. Then the guy got frustrated at me, and then eventually wound up getting to talk to the person that he wanted to talk to. But that person was just crazy busy because we were shorthanded, holiday week, people going on vacation, blah, 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 whatever. Right. So the thing that drove me most berserk was he complained to the person who'd been working there the longest that he hates having to talk to new people because it just messes everything up, and he just can't handle that stress. He can't stress someone new answering the phone. Dude's like 24 years old. He talked to two of us really, really horribly without any reason, and he's part of like a church group thing. And I'm like, what would Jesus do? I know, trash talk the new employees that are trying to help him on the phone. Wow. That's all I'm going to say about that, and I'm going to let that go. But old man, get off of my lawn, me, understands to an extent what Ridley Scott is saying, but I'm going to say this. I don't think that's the case with this. I don't think this is literally the case of the millennials hate period piece dramas, or they don't like Ridley Scott's movies, or they don't like these actors, or I don't think it's got anything to do with that whatsoever. Ridley Scott, in this case, in my personal opinion, just my personal opinion, I feel like that he's just a little misguided, because I don't think this has anything to do with millennials. Number one, I don't think millennials was the target audience for this, number one. And then number two, I had a friend tell me about this movie. I hadn't heard anything about it at all. He told me about the movie. He's not into genre stuff at all. He told me about the movie. We watched the trailer. We were going to go see the movie. Eric, I forgot it even came out. I totally forgot it even came out. By the time I realized it was already playing, it was only showing on one screen because they had a shitty release schedule. So all I'm going to tell you is whoever promoted and released this movie did a horrible job. It has nothing to do with millennials. It has nothing to do with people hating period movies, in my personal opinion, from my experience when it comes to the movie The Duel, which I was interested in seeing. Number one, I didn't know anything about it to start
The
off with,
Last
and
Duel,
then
by the way, it's the
the
Last
Last
Duel.
Duel. I'm
The
sorry, the
Duel is a
Last
different
Duel.
movie. I just want to make that
Right,
clarification.
my mistake. But there you go. There's part of it. I've
It's
heard
part
so
of it,
little
right?
about it.
That's part
I'm
of it.
not even exactly sure the name of the movie. I know it's Duel something, but that's what I'm talking about. Like, I didn't even know it was coming out until someone who's not in my normal circle of friends told me about it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then we watched their trailer and I go, that's cool. And then I don't hear a word about it. I don't hear a word about it. I don't hear positive reviews, negative reviews. I don't hear anybody going to go see it. Like, I don't hear anything about the movie whatsoever. And then by the time I remember it's coming out and we go, hey, we should go see that, it's on one screen showing at one weird time, like right towards the like kind of end of the day, but not really in time for me to get off work and go see it. That's why I didn't see it. That's all there is to it. I think it had a shitty release schedule, and whoever promoted this movie did a horrible job, in my
Yeah,
personal opinion.
you know, I think you make a great point because I think, in a way, Ridley Scott kind of has it backwards because I too, I mean, I I had some terrible experiences with millennials in the workplace. Okay, I'll say that right off the bat. Okay, I had some terrible experiences with millennials. I remember even a young guy at my work, and I remember he was a millennial, and I remember actually complaining to him about his peers. And I remember he actually said to me, and this is someone who I actually did respect, and I was just telling him, I was like, dude, what the hell is the matter with your generation? And he looked me straight in the eye. I said, Eric, I have no idea. I can't tell you. I get where you're coming from, and I don't get it either. And this is a guy who was much younger than me, and we were connecting in that way. So so there is that aspect of it, but I think he's got it wrong in this instance. I think Disney is to blame. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Because just what you said, you and I hadn't heard of this movie, really. I mean, I
right.
vaguely remember seeing a commercial for this, and this is right up my alley. I
Yeah,
like knights and shining armor and that kind of stuff. I like sword play and things like that. I dig that stuff. I think that's cool, Um, and I feel like I saw more stuff actually for the Green Knight, which I was also interested in, but I didn't have a chance to see. I did want to see that, and it just kind of got lost for me. But I remember maybe seeing like one ad for this, and then never hearing anything about it again. And just like you said, I don't remember hearing anybody reviewing it. I don't remember seeing any of like the YouTubers that I like talking about it. You know what I mean? Good or
right,
bad.
right,
And truly, there is no such thing as bad publicity. Even if people are knocking it, they're talking about it, right? That's the point.
right.
And I didn't hear it. It was just apathy. It was like pure, total apathy. So I think it's really interesting because he's defending the studio, and I think in this case, the studio actually did do him dirty, that they didn't properly promote this film. I don't think that maybe they didn't know who to promote it to. Maybe that was part of the problem, right? Is they weren't sure who was this film made for. That is a big
Well,
question in Hollywood, right? And if they can't answer that themselves, they're in trouble.
right. And that's kind of what I'm saying. I feel like that in this case, it is a disservice to put this basically on the millennials, because I feel like this is just a general marketing problem. Like, I don't think they knew exactly, and that's the thing. If he's blaming the millennials, it makes me wonder if someone thought that this would be a great film for millennials, and then maybe they thought that they could sell it to millennials. Like, maybe they just assumed like people like us would just seek this stuff out, and then they go, okay, well, in that case, we're just going to focus on marketing and selling this to millennials. And that might explain some of his feelings about it, but
But then again, but then
beyond
again,
that,
but then why isn't he? Why is he defending the studio so much? Why is he saying
well,
the
that's
studio
what I'm saying.
did
He
great?
may Well, that's what I'm saying. He may be thinking that, the studio did a good job of trying to get the message out to millennials, but they don't care. But all I'm going to say is, like, if your job was to primarily market this to millennials and you didn't basically lean into the core audience that would love something like this, then the reason your movie bombed is because you sold it to the wrong people.
Yeah, I think that that's a significant part of it too, and it goes back to me, saying like I wonder if some people at the studio kind of were confused, you know what I mean, as far as who to
Right.
market this to. There is it also should be mentioned that just based on the cycle of when films are made or how long it takes to make a film, because I don't know exactly when they started production. I'm sure that this started under the old regime, right? This started
Right.
when Fox was still a studio, its own studio, before
Right.
before Disney acquired it. So I also wonder if it kind of got lost in the shuffle, where it's one of those things like, did this movie have an advocate? Ridley Scott is saying they did. He's saying that the bosses loved it. He's saying the suits loved it, and he didn't think the suits would like it. That's in the article. He actually says, I didn't think they were going to like it, but they did. He said that they actually were behind it. They got it. They were like, I dig it. So, but you kind of wonder, did the advocate kind of get lost in the shuffle? The big advocate is he or she even there anymore? Right.
Right.
Like the person, because this was somebody's baby, right? On the producer side, right? On the suit side, the studio side, somebody was advocating for this, or possibly multiple people were advocating for this. And I wonder if those people were still around when the movie actually came out, or if their heads
Yeah.
had already rolled, by that point,
And that's a very, very good comment. The entertainment industry is incredibly difficult, and you really do need that. I think advocate is a great word, not just from a film promotion standpoint, but even from a professional standpoint. You need that sort of career advocate, that person who believes in what you're doing, whether it's your own project that you've produced and filmed, or it's just you professionally trying to get a gig or trying to stay employed. Like that advocate is very, very important. um, and in all honesty, Eric, I just really feel like that I feel like this film was just horribly mismarketed. I know he wants to think that, oh, they did a great job, but if they did a great job selling it to millennials, the film would have found an audience, and I would have heard people talking about it. I mean, I have people that I work with, people that are in my life that might be like, hey, I saw this movie, it was really great, and they're millennials. But I just feel like it is a disservice to blame millennials for this, because I don't think this is not a millennials fault. This is an advertising marketing like screw up. and
right.
and I think plain and simple, that's all it is. I mean, it's probably even a good movie. I usually like Ridley Scott's movies. So, but again, even me who likes Ridley Scott's movies, who's into the whole, knights and chivalry stuff,
Yeah.
like I love all that kind of stuff. And the fact that I didn't even know when this was coming out and I forgot about it. And then initially I didn't even know about it at all. That is a marketing problem. You are selling this film to the wrong damn audience. That's all this is.
Well, I'll give you a great personal example of that as well. This is the kind of movie that I would be interested in, because like I said, I do like this stuff. I do like swordplay. I do like knights. I love knights. I think knights are fascinating, chivalry, all that stuff. And I dig it. I'm into it. I'm a fan of that genre. I've heard more about House of Gucci, which I would never go watch, which I have absolutely zero interest in. In fact, I'm one of those people who's like, why would you even make a film like this? I don't care. But I'm getting tons of stuff about House of Gucci, whether I want it or not. And that's the point, right? Is that's how marketing works, right? If it's working right, you're going to hear about it whether you want to or not, right? You
Right.
don't have to
Right.
seek it out. I'm like avoiding House of Gucci. Like I don't want anything to do with it. And I still know more about House of Gucci than I knew about the Last Duel.
Yeah. And see, I think at the end of the day, that's the whole ball of wax. That's the whole problem right there. And I, like I said, I honestly just feel like, it's probably a great film. And I know it's got a great cast. I like pretty much, all the actors and everyone involved with it for the most part. And that's the thing, something like this that's got Ben Affleck and Matt Damon in it, I would normally go see it, but the reason I didn't go see it is honestly because I forgot when it was coming out. That's, that's,
Exactly.
that's all there is to it. I honestly forgot. And then, like I said, by the time that I remembered it was coming out and I was like, oh, I want to go see that. It basically, its run cycle was basically done. It was basically over. And so it had a really weird time. It was only showing in one screen. And I'm just like, I remember like I couldn't even get off work in enough time to go watch it if I wanted to, because it was literally like playing at such a horrible time of day. So again, like I said, I'm sorry, Ridley Scott. I feel like that you're blaming the wrong people. I feel like that whoever marketed your movie did a horrible job.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're on the same page with that. And again, I've been hearing more about House of Gucci than I ever heard about The Last Duel. And
Yeah,
again, and the House of Gucci is definitely not made for me. That is
yeah.
something I wouldn't go anywhere near. But I'm hearing all sorts of stuff about it. You know, so who knows? Who knows? Again, I do wonder if it got a little bit lost in the shuffle. Of the the company changing hands and all that kind of stuff. Because I could totally see that as a likely scenario, that it just kind of lost its advocate. Or
Right.
that person, even if they weren't fired, where they moved, right, where they moved to another position in the shuffle. That's the other thing that happens. Oftentimes when a company acquires another company, right? Even if you don't get fired, they put you in a new position, up
Right.
or
Right.
down. So now you just got a new guy there that he just inherits this, he or she, I should say. And a lot of people, especially in the film industry, they don't like to inherit stuff. They want their baby, right? They want the thing that they nurtured and they started and all that kind of stuff. They don't want somebody else's project. It doesn't have the same meaning to them when that happens. It's no
Well,
longer their thing.
and it's weird too because even though you think that kind of mentality wouldn't extend to the comic book industry, I have, been on projects that have suffered from that same thing where, someone's just trying to finish someone else's project. They have no real invested interest in it. And then a lot of times too, to make it even more complicated or whatever, there's also the aspect of that, sometimes when you're in that kind of a position, your job is justified sometimes by the projects that you find and you help create. Like that's what your name is all built around. So, leading someone else's idea to success a lot of times doesn't do you creatively, professionally, whatever. It doesn't do you like a damn bit of good.
Right. Yeah, that's a
Um,
good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, that I think that totally happens. And again, I'm just speculating. I just think it is interesting that he fully supports the studio, acknowledging the fact that he had concerns, especially with the shuffle and everything like that. But he's like, no, they did me well. Just it's those
no,
damn kids on my lawn. You know what I mean?
no,
So
no. I feel like that's totally misplaced in this case. That's just my opinion, but I don't think you can blame the millennials for this one because, like I said, I would consider myself part of the core audience for this, and I didn't know a damn thing about this until someone who I don't talk to on a regular basis, who I wouldn't even think would like this kind of movie, talked to me about it.
yep. No, that, that
And
says it
they
that says it all there. It really does.
and he assumed I probably already knew more about it because I'm more into that stuff than he is. I hadn't heard a word, not a single word.
Yeah, I'm exactly in the same boat, and I totally feel like if this was properly marketed towards me, um, there is a much higher likelihood I would have gone and seen it. So, but you never know. And I'm sure there's other people out there that are probably blaming superhero films, right? So there's that aspect
Again,
of it too. So
again, this got nothing to do with this. But I
exactly.
understand. I understand what you're saying. Got nothing to do with this. But yeah, I'm not going to be surprised when I see it. But still.
All right. Did you have any other thoughts on that story?
No, honestly, I do not. So, and
The
we're moving along at a pretty good clip here. So I think
It's looking good.
thanks. I think
I dig it. I know
we might be
I know it's got to be a little bit little different for you, Dave, because normally we are live, and you
yeah.
get feedback from the Rogues Gallery, who is awesome and very supportive. Right now, all you got is me, but I am digging it. I do think it's really cool. It's looking good.
Thanks.
I did have one more story that I
Cool.
kind of had it as a backup in case we kind of we're starting to run out of material. Unfortunately, we don't have the Rogues Gallery here to tell us, hey, what do you guys think about this? Or did you hear about that? I definitely missed that aspect, not having that right now. So you folks in the Rogues Gallery out there, you're definitely missed right now. But again, this is a pre-recorded show, but I did have another article just in case we needed it. And Dave was telling me he didn't know anything about this. So we'll actually get sort of a reaction from Dave about this story, which some of you might have heard of. So this actually, I think the launch was actually today, which for you folks, as this is coming out, that would mean it was yesterday. But this is from space.com. And it says, DART timeline, what's next for NASA's asteroid smashing mission after launch? It says, like other space missions, DART is packed with milestones, especially in the first few weeks after launch. It says NASA's first planetary defense mission is underway, though we'll have to wait a little while for its promised in-space fireworks. The double asteroid redirection test, that's DART for short, probe launched from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California early Wednesday morning, November 24th, riding a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket into the final frontier. Think of those words that I'm talking about. So we're talking about this planetary defense. We're talking about this asteroid redirection test launched from a Space Force base, right? And it's riding on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. I mean, truly, it feels like the future is now. In late September or early October of 2022, the 1,210-pound DART spacecraft will slam into a small asteroid named Dimorphos. I'm sorry, I'm butchering that. Change the space rock's orbit around its larger companion. I'm not even trying. Astronomers will quantify that change, gauging the effectiveness of the kinetic impact method of asteroid deflection, a strategy humanity might need to employ in the future against a rock that lines Earth up in its crosshairs. So, Dave, my understanding was you hadn't heard about this at all, but what do you think about that? Planetary defense, that's something
Yeah.
I don't think we ever thought that we would be really talking about seriously as an actual real thing, but we're not talking about aliens here. We're talking about asteroids. We're talking about Deep Impact, Armageddon, those movies actually coming to life.
Well, and in my mind, it even goes like a little bit of a step further into even more crazy science fiction because the bugs on Klendathu and Starship Troopers were shooting asteroids, knocking asteroids loose, and they were hitting the Earth. So, like, it there's a lot of different, real and even more crazy, fantastical, fictitious, sort of things that are running through my head right now. So what I'm going to do here on this drawing here is while I'm talking, I'm going to go ahead and work on finishing this. So the drawing is done. The base colors were laid down. I put in the rendering. It's got a cell animated kind of style. That's honestly what I normally like to do anyway. And so what I'm going to do, thank you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put an effect, like a glow effect on it. And then we're basically going to call it done. So while I give you my thoughts on this. I'm going to do this at the same time.
Awesome.
So, um, for me, the thing I initially think of is kind of like what you're saying. It's crazy because it's total kind of science fiction. Because you mentioned this story when we were, actually before we actually started the show tonight, because we were discussing what kinds of things that we wanted to talk about, and that to me is just kind of crazy because that's exactly what it is. It's total crazy science fiction time, which is interesting. Um, but it goes to a larger thing. I mean, when, we're talking about Space Force and stuff. It's just to me, it's just really interesting. And honestly, I feel like a little crazy to think about like that this is the world that we live in today, that this kind of stuff is not science fiction but real. And no, I hadn't heard anything about it. Um, but it's just interesting to me. I mean, I guess that's kind of my thing. I just think it's really, really interesting. Um, yeah, and it goes, asteroid protection. When you want to talk about deep impact and all that other stuff, I remember whenever they talked about these kind of things, like in the '90s, like this is the kind of the stuff that used to seem to kind of scare the hell out of people when they would talk about it. Like, oh my gosh, like an asteroid's gonna come wipe us out like the dinosaurs. So, um, in that sense, it's a very, very good thing, you know. Um, but additionally, it's also just kind of crazy to me that we live in a world where this is straight up like, like a thing. Like it's not just science fiction, it's like freaking real. Like that's just crazy to me.
Yeah, that's why I thought it would be interesting to talk about on the show, because it literally is like these different aspects of these science fiction films are literally happening right now. And I think it's I also think it's interesting when you think about the coordination, because there are three different agencies here, right? Because it took off from a Space Force base. It's a
Right.
NASA project, and then of course they're
Right.
using a SpaceX rocket. So it's really interesting to me because we're seeing those players, you know, some of which are traditional, like NASA, right? And then we have these new players like Space Force and SpaceX that are going to, I think, become more and more prominent. The longer, the more time goes by. They're going to become like, for I think kids growing up, it's going to be just like NASA, was for us. Just it's always been
Right.
there. It's this kind of thing. And they do this really wild, crazy, awesome stuff. But also I just think it's a lot of people. I think that when they hear the term planetary defense, they're like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what is that? What are you even talking about? It's not a term that we've grown up with, that people are familiar with, and it's something that you're going to have to be. And I think it's actually a very good thing, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when does a significant asteroid hit us. It's not necessarily going to be the extinction level event, but it certainly could be very significant, especially if it hits a populated area, a major city, something like that. It could cause massive devastation. So even on a smaller scale. So it's like the fact that they are developing this technology, I think is awesome. And it's very much something that, could potentially save millions, if not billions of lives in the future if this stuff works.
Yeah, it's very, very important, like and like I said, it's like I just remember that was such a, like, again, like in the '90s, I remember everyone was so terrified at the idea that, this thing's gonna, basically like come from space and wipe us all out. Like everyone was
Right.
really, really concerned about that. So it's great, that they're doing something like this, because those of us who grew up with those weird ass fears now go, okay, well, at least we kind of got a plan. But again, like I said, on the flip of that, to me, it just sounds like, not crazy town, but it is just so. I just personally find it so crazy, that's where we are, that it's not science fiction, that it's real, that it's needed, and then you add in the extra dimension of, the fact that Space Force is behind this, and then we've got basically a civilian built spacecraft that's helping to facilitate this. It's absolutely nuts to me. Absolutely nuts and crazy. It's cool too, but just freaking nuts. So
Yeah, like I said, the future is now. That's how I feel about it. It's just like it's amazing to see all these things coming together, and I just think the future is bright, folks. I mean, that's what I think. It's just like it's nice to see stuff like this, and I think for a lot of people who sometimes don't understand space exploration, and they just like, oh well, why aren't we focusing on quote unquote stuff here instead of out in space? This is exactly the reason why we're focusing on things in space, because guess what, folks, there are things from space that could kill us. You know what I mean? Like that, we know that's just a fact. So we have to be prepared for this kind of stuff, and it is a massive undertaking. It's not just something you can do ad hoc, like in the movies where all of a sudden they just scramble submission, and we're doing it. No, you got to test this stuff out. We got to figure out, this test might not work.
right.
It might not get the desired effect. It might just not work. So they might have to go a different approach, and that's what part of this whole thing is. So I just think it's awesome, and I'm all for it. And again, I just think it's an exciting time to be alive, folks. That's the way that I look at it.
Very cool. Very cool. And I think that's going to do it for our Slimer there. Again, it was kind of weird doing this without any feedback from the Rogues Gallery. I feel like this is probably one of the better things I've done live, actually, on the show. So the fact that Rogues Gallery didn't get to participate in real time kind of hurts me a little bit, to be honest with you. But I hope those of you who have watched this actually on the broadcast, I hope that you enjoyed watching this come together. I think it turned out pretty nice. So,
well, I did get to watch it live, and I did think it came together awesome, and I really do think it looks great, Dave. I really dig
Thank
it.
you.
I am a Ghostbusters fan. I am a Slimer fan, and I think this is a really good depiction of the character, which I think is very iconic when it comes to Ghostbusters. So, very, very cool. I think I definitely like it.
Thank you. Like I said, I like how it came. I think it turned out pretty good. It was interesting because I was thinking more of the movie depiction, but the animation, the real Ghostbusters. I love the real Ghostbusters cartoon. The real Ghostbusters cartoon just kind of came out as I was drawing it, which is kind of cool because it's an interesting hybrid. Like I feel like this would be a great comic book rendition, following like the actual movies themselves. It kind of sits
Yeah,
kind of in between. It's got that animation kind of flavor to it, but it looks more like the actual, depicted, Slimer from the original film at the same time. At least I think so.
yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. I think, and I like the glow effect too. I think that actually came out really well. I think that's really cool.
Cool. Thanks. Awesome. All right. Do we have anything else that we want to cover, or do we think that's good?
No, I think we're good. We're coming up at an hour and 20 minutes. So,
All right. Very cool. All right. So go ahead and go to the outro. I want to start off by thanking those of you who watch this as in the broadcast forum. I wish that we could have done this show live for you, but with the holidays and stuff and everything, it gets kind of complicated. So I hope you all still enjoy this episode. And I want to say that I greatly, greatly missed the Rogues Gallery tonight. I thoroughly enjoy everyone's comments. I enjoy everyone's reactions. And you make this show so much more fun for me personally. And seeing as how we're coming up on Thanksgiving, I want to give thanks to all of you in the Rogues Gallery who make the show so much fun for me. And I hope everyone is having a great holiday, hopefully with their family and their friends. and that's going to be it. So if you're curious to learn more about me, see about what occupies a lot of my time, you can definitely go check out my t-shirt company. That's Kirby Tees. That's over at www.kirbyts.com. Again, krbyts.com. Got a lot of fun things over there. Brains Are Magic by Sarah Aerosmith. Great shirt. We also got the Janimals Skeletor. Like, there's a lot of really great fun shirts over there. Definitely check them out. And also, we have a great selection of Retro Rogues Live t-shirts. I'd like to encourage you to hopefully take a look at the Retro Rogues Live t-shirts and consider purchasing a Retro Rogues Live t-shirt and supporting what we do here on the show. We would greatly appreciate your support. But enough about that. I want to thank, as always, my great co-host, Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks, hopefully watching or listening at home, where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I'm most active on Twitter. You can find me there at BassGod14. That's at BASSGOD14. My DMs are wide open. I often take suggestions from folks for articles or things they want us to check out, and then I incorporate them into the show. So if you have a rumor or you heard something, comic book industry, toy industry, film industry, we cover all those different kinds of things. Streaming wars on this show, let me know, and I'll definitely try to incorporate it into the show. BaseGod14 is also the official YouTube. That's also the official Twitch. So if you comment on those platforms, more likely than not, I will be the one responding to you. I love the interaction, and seeing how this is going to be coming out on Thanksgiving Day, I do want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and totally back up what Dave said, that I am very thankful for the Rogues Gallery when you folks are out here commenting, and it is a little it's definitely not quite as fun without you folks here, but I hope you do get to check it out when this show comes out and you enjoy it, and hopefully I will be out there at least in the chat to appreciate your comments, and you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will leave that as a